announcement by way of my introduction to the first panelist. It is with a tremendous amount of pleasure that our Frontline team is happy to announce and present today at the National Press Club our newest team member who will be leading our outreach to the public safety community, Louie Freeh. Now, Louie Freeh, of course, is best known for his distinguished leadership of the FBI, but what that means is to us, and we think to our efforts, is that Louie is, in fact, one of the most prominent members of the public safety community in the country. And because of that perspective that he has and the national perspective that he has from his background, and because he cares very much about this subject, he's agreed to join our team, and we are delighted to have him here. And so with that, I will turn it over to our first panelist, Louie Freeh.
Thank you very much, Haynes and Janice. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. And I just got a couple of brief remarks, and then hopefully we can get some questions. You know, communications in law enforcement obviously critical for public safety, for the protection of our officers, first responders, firefighters. When I started as a new agent in New York City in 1975, if someone wanted to reach you, they would call you on the radio, and then you would stop over at a payphone and make a call. We didn't have beepers in those days. And communications developed probably slower in the law enforcement, public safety community than the rest of the country. I remember incidents going back where we asked FBI headquarters once for a secreted microphone that we could use in an undercover operation. And this was against an organized crime subject in New York City. So they said, we have just the thing for you. So they sent up eventually, of course we got it the night before the operation, a shoe where they had embedded a microphone. The problem is it was a size 13 shoe, and the informant was about 5'2". So on the tape recording, the first thing Big Mike Clemente, captain of the Genovese family, is heard to say is, "John, what's the matter with your foot?" We had another incident. This is a true story, and then I'll get serious for a moment. A witness had a transmitter. We called it a T4, a small device that didn't record but transmitted. So he's in a laboratory with a wise guy doing a transaction, and the transmitter falls out of his pocket, bounces across the floor. So myself and the other agents were prepared to go in and rescue him. We were out of our cars, and then we hear on the transmitter the informant telling the wise guy, "Oh, geez, it's my pacemaker." And the wise guy saying, "Gee, I'm so sorry," and he picks it up and he gives it back to him. So, you know, thankfully we weren't working against the smartest and the best, but needless to say, our technology needed a little bit of work. You know, I had three main communications objectives when I came down here in 1993. One was the problem that resulted in the passage of the Communications and Law Enforcement Assistance Act, the communications moving from an analog to a digital world, and the switches where we would bring our court-authorized wiretap orders to the common carriers. No appearances in the new switches, the software switches that were being built. A huge problem that would have de facto put not just the FBI but 18,000 police departments around the United States and also our national security agencies out of the electronic surveillance business. So early on in 1993, I went to the White House. I asked for their help. I was told that the White House would not spend any political capital on this. This was too difficult an issue. And we basically slugged it out member by member over the course of about a year. Pat Leahy and Don Edwards were actually our sponsors. We finally got the bill passed. It was a typical Washington exercise. We managed in getting the bill passed to unite the extreme left and the extreme right. The right being libertarians who said this is great, it's the end of wiretapping, and the extreme left that said the FBI should have never had that power in the first place. It was the only time in 8 years when we had forged that kind of alliance up on the Hill. The resistance by the common carriers was ferocious. It was also defensible in the sense that they wanted to know who was going to pay for this. And ultimately, authorizations and appropriations were made. And although it took many years to implement, Reed and I testified together several times. There was a tremendous amount of great and effective cooperation between the Commission, the FBI, and good people in the Congress who said, you know what, this is a bigger issue than common carriage. It's a bigger issue than all the things that were put into opposition. And the statute was passed and finally implemented. The second issue that was very important to me was the encryption issue, because even though CALEA provided access, if you can't understand or decipher what's being collected, it's of no good to you. And again, very, very fierce opposition to any notion that the government should be given controlled access to decryption devices. That problem is not completely solved, but because of the exigencies of 9/11 and the accommodations, reasonable accommodations, and accommodations that I think go a long way to making sure the country is protected and communications between bad people or people who are going to blow us up are accessed, has been solved. The third piece of it, which is why I'm so interested in this proposal and why I think the Frontline presentation is so right on, is the interoperability of communications on an Internet-based network for first responders and police chiefs, EMS people. You know, we have 18,000 police departments in the United States. We're the only country, by the way, that has that. We don't have a national police. The FBI is not a national police. There are less FBI agents than Chicago police officers. And that's the way the framers wanted it when they wrote the Constitution. They wanted no standing army, no central bank, and no national law enforcement agency. So there is none. The result of that, however, is the critical need for the first responders, the people who protect us, to be able to communicate, particularly in an emergency. And that capability does not exist. And this auction is just the last chance, I think, at least in my time, to see some effective plan to be implemented, funded, in this case, totally funded by the private sector, not by the taxpayer, not by law enforcement budgets, which really don't accommodate for this kind of an expense. And I think it's very, very critical that we ensure the first responders are able to speak to each other, not only in an emergency, whether it's a terrorist attack or a hurricane, but really to do their job and to do it effectively. So the need, I think, today for this new network with open access, with interoperability and communications, is more critical than ever. I think the Frontline effort, which looks at a private sector fix, is exactly what's needed. I don't think, having spent 26 years in various government positions, that the government is going to be able to do this on its own. It's obviously not been able to do that. We need to give first responders a world-class, interoperable broadband network that will serve all Americans, which is why the 99% versus the Verizon proposal is so critical. The population of the country has to be covered. Otherwise, I don't think they can be adequately protected. It's very good for public safety, their proposal. It's also going to result in a network that, from their point of view and the taxpayer's point of view, gets built for free. I'm certain that law enforcement and public safety will be able to work this together. When we did the IAFIS and the NCIC 2000 programs back in the 90s in the FBI, we could not have done them without the help of the private sector. The same with the InfraGuard and National Infrastructure Protection Programs. We have to have this very capable and viable and smart partner to get the job done. The legitimate questions on whether public safety can coexist, with a commercial user, I think have been addressed and answered in the affirmative by the Northrop Grumman IP wireless project and some of the work of other companies. So, I really look forward to this not only as a last opportunity, but really a tremendously positive opportunity for building, as Haynes said, something with national access, with open access, with competitive access. And I think a new build is required. It's not going to be able to work on the highway that currently exists. So, we hope that the FCC adopts the right rules that will make this auction work for public safety, and that the network gets built with all deliberate speed. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm very, very happy to be back in the campaign that I left a couple years ago. Thank you.
Well, you can see why we